What's up everybody, Adam Reed here from Radical Media. Absolutely terrible day outside, but I'm still glad you could join me. Today's a good one. We are going to be talking about color grading and some of the theory behind it, and how to create 5 unique different color grades. Roll that intro. So color grading can be used for a lot more than just making your footage look cool. It's used for making your footage look cool, but it can be used to represent certain things. This video that you're watching right now, it is my year 12, so final year of high school media film, and the color grading represents when there's the thing is after the girl. Basically it was just a thing about childhood fears that was called It's Under the Bed. Whenever it got darker and it got really contrasty, that's when the audience knew that we were looking at it from the thing or the monster's perspective. That's just one way you can use it. I've used that in another film as well. And it is pretty effective because people understand what that means, especially when you combine it with sound. Mention temperature of your footage. Temperature is either cold or warm or neutral, but don't really go neutral. Jesus Christ, that was loud. Jesus. Basically temperature is either warm or cold. If it's a cold environment, go cold. If it's a warm environment, go warm. But if it is kind of a family, like a home feeling, or you're trying to represent hope, something like that, or happiness, make sure your color is a little bit warmer. You can change this in editing, or you can choose it with your white balance. Have more control in editing. Just make sure your white balance isn't something stupid like fluorescent when it's outside. But if it's kind of like a harsh environment that you're in, or you're trying to represent some kind of evil or isolation or something like that, you're probably going to want to be more cold, because when you're cold you feel a lot more isolated than if you're warm. So that's just some simple representations of how you can use temperature and different types of color grading to represent certain things. I don't want to talk too much about the theory of color grading, so let's head over to this computer behind me. So I've got 5 clips here for you guys, and we are going to color grade them in extremely different ways. They're going to be quite unique and different to your usual color grading that you see in videos. Let's take a look at them. This is the first clip. It is some water running over some rocks in a nice stream. It's going to look really nice. And then we've got this one, a nice little bit of slow motion of me taking photos in the morning. Then we have this old camera that my mate was using, and a cow. Yes, a cow. Then a nice drone shot that is clearly done in the summer at the mighty Murray River. Now, before you color grade, you should always color grade on an adjustment layer. To get one, head down here, click this button, click adjustment layer, click OK, and then just drag and drop that on top of your footage and drag that all the way out. Now you're going to want to do all of your color grading on this adjustment layer, so then you can always go back and change it. Just click C to bring up the cutting tool and just cut it on each of these, because they're all going to be extremely different color grades. Now, make sure your adjustment layer is selected. Head up to the color tab, which I already have open, and this is the first shot we are going to color grade. This is going to be a clean kind of look, maybe something you'll use in a professional client video. So what I'm going to do with this is I am going to drop the blacks, fair amount. I'm going to drop down the shadows, increase the whites, increase the highlights, increase the contrast. Now, that was extremely quick, but tick that, untick that, already a big improvement. Now I'm going to head down to the curves tab, and I'm going to increase the blacks, bring those blacks back down there, bring the highlights back up to the middle, and increase the highlights. If that made sense. Just gives it a little bit of cleaner look. Now I'm going to head to blue, bring the blues up, then bring it down just like the blacks, bring the midtones back up, and bring the highlights back up. There we go. The reason why I've done this is because shadows are normally kind of have a blue tinge to it, and it's also water, so why wouldn't it be blue? Tick that, untick that, you can see what we have done with these curves so far. But we're going to hit the red tab, click in the middle, increase the highlights, decrease the shadows just slightly, and I'm actually going to increase these midtones a bit to give these rocks a nice red look. I'm going to grab the greens, and I'm going to decrease them in the shadows and increase them in the highlights, giving a slight S-curve. Just with these curves, we have made the colors pop, but not too much, and they still look professional. I'm going to head back to basic correction, and I'm going to make it a little bit cooler, because this is an extremely clean, quick way to color grade your videos if you want it to look really realistic. Good for product shots, since it gives a nice crisp look, and just general color grading for a general kind of video. On to the next one. This shot, we are going to create a color contrast between blues and reds. So it's going to look completely different to this. We're going to be messing with the colors. First off, I'm going to do my usual of dropping the blacks, dropping the shadows, increasing the contrast, increase the highlights slightly, and the whites slightly. That's just the look that I like to get, and I know my camera, so I know that this is how it's going to look. Gonna head to curves, do the exact same thing as before with the blacks. Just gonna do this real quick. As I said before, it gives it a cleaner look in my opinion. Now we're gonna stop there. We're gonna head down to color wheels. And this is where it's gonna get interesting. In the shadows, we're gonna create a blue, kind of a bluish purple kind of look with the shadows. That's probably a little bit too much, so let's just bring them down a bit. But then in the midtones, we're gonna create kind of a magenta. That is way too much. Bring down the midtones a bit. And we're going to do the same with the highlights. It's a little bit too purple for me, so I'm going to make it red. And bring them down again. I'm going to increase the shadows. It's all just about playing around. These midtones are still too high for me. And now I can increase them a little bit, like little by little. Make these highlights not as crazy. Now I'm going to head back up to basic correction. I'm going to increase this contrast a lot. And I'm going to make it a little bit bluer with the temperature just to take out the redness in this area because I want that to be nice and blue. And I'm going to tilt this a little bit towards the purple side or the pink side, whichever one you want. Now if we take off these color wheels, that is what it is, and that is what we made it. We made a color contrast. That's what a color contrast is. Take off all the grading with this button, and that is what it was, and that's what we made it. This is a cinematic look that you can use in cinematic edits. Let's move on to the next shot now of this camera. We're going to go for a little bit of a vintage look. How we're going to do that is using faded film. We're not just going to use the slider. I hate the slider. We're going to grab these blacks, bring them up, grab the shadows, bring them up, grab the highlights, bring them down, grab the whites, bring them down. Essentially the exact opposite to what I've done in every single other color grading in this. I'm going to increase the contrast just slightly, and we're going to leave that there. Going to head to the curves. We're going to bring these blacks up on the diagonal and do the exact same with the highlights. Basically what that does, that creates the faded film effect, but you have more control over it. Now I'm also going to head to creative, and I'm going to get this saturation, and I'm going to drop that, not saturation, sharpen, sorry. I'm going to drop that down a little bit because it's a vintage look, right? Old cameras are not 100% crisp like this, what would come out of any modern DSLR. So we're going to drop down the sharpness just a little bit to make it look a little bit muddy, but not too muddy that it looks gross. So I'm going to leave that there, and then I'm going to drop the saturation and increase the vibrance, just so then we've still got those greens in the background here, but it doesn't look too fluorescent and crap like it does now. There we go. Now I'm going to head back to the curves, grab the greens, and I'm just going to increase them slightly. Not too much though, that is way too much. Come on, there we go. Now, as you can see, I think this is a cool effect that you can use if it's kind of, you're going for an old-fashioned look, or even just in cinematic sequences. It can look good in anything really. Now that that one is done, it's very different. We're going to head to this one of a cow. We're going to be creating color contrast again, but with some different colors. Click on the adjustments layer, head back to basic correction, and you guessed it, I'm going to do the exact same thing as I have done with pretty much anything except for that last one, just because I know what the camera is like. Now I know that this is a little bit underexposed, so I'm going to make this 0.3 more exposure just to make it look nicer. Basically what this one's going to be, it's going to be good for kind of old styled things, or skin tones, or something like that that's still sharp, so unlike the other one. I don't know, it gives kind of like an antique-y kind of look. I don't really know how to explain it. That is just the base color grade, and I'm going to head to the curves, do the exact same thing with the blacks, just because I like how that looks. Maybe increase this contrast a little bit more by doing that. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to head to the green tab. I'm going to increase the greens in the shadows, kind of like I normally do with the blues, but this time with the greens. And we're going to bring them back down and up to there. Now we're going to grab the reds, and we're just going to increase them in the midtones and the highlights, but then bring them down in the shadows. So kind of an S-curve, but not really. Blues we're just going to bring down slightly. I'm going to head back up to basic correction, and I'm going to give this kind of a yellow temperature and make the tint a little bit more green. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit more. I'm going to make this more yellow to give it kind of that vintage kind of look, something that's old, something that's aged, or
just something like that, or create this contrast between brown and green, which you see a lot in the summertime. I'm going to do the same as I did with the other one. I'm going to decrease the saturation and increase the vibrance. But I'm going to increase the vibrance a lot. Now if we play this one through, I think that looks lovely. So, on to the last one, the clearly summer one. This is going to be kind of more of a filter effect that you might use in your vlogs, or any kind of casual video that you're making. And since this is a drone shot, drones don't like creating contrasty images, so drop the blacks a lot and the shadows. And since these highlights are so crazy, I'm going to drop them and the whites down a bit. Now, I'm going to head to the color wheels, make the shadows quite blue. Now I know this isn't really looking too good right now, but we're going to grab these midtones, make them kind of an orange. I'm going to make these highlights kind of an orangey red, a little bit more to the red side than the midtones. I'm going to head back up to the curves, grab these blues here, I'm going to increase them in the shadows, just bring the middle part back down so then it looks a bit more like that. This is kind of like the color contrast with the red and the blue, but it's more of an orange, and making this kind of filtered effect, if that makes sense. And that was just a really quick way to get this filtered kind of fun looking effect. So then we have created 5 extremely different, extremely creative and unique color grading tools. This first one here is a really clean, really simple effect. You can't really tell it's been color graded and manipulated, it just looks really nice and naturalistic. Next one is definitely not naturalistic, with these color contrasts. Next one is kind of like a vintage look, where it looks aged and a little bit muddy. Next one is kind of used for old things in the summer. It's good for skin tones too. Try it out, you'll understand. And then this last one is for a nice summer filtered effect, which you don't really want to use for professional videos. I would use this for a vlog or something like that. So that is going to do for me today. I hope that you learned something from this video, and I hope you take away that color grading can be used more than just a technique to make your footage look better. It is used just to make your footage look better in some cases, but you can use it to tell a story. Color grading should be affected by the type of video that you're making. If you want a casual, kind of fun looking vibe, make it colorful and vibrant, it's still nice and neat, or give it that filtered effect. If it's kind of a professional video, or something you want to look more neat and just more professional really, go with the cleaner kind of looks. Don't go too insane with the colors, but still keep them nice and bright. But yeah, that's going to do for me today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Yeah, the next video, I'll see you there. Alright, I'm going to leave now. Catch you guys later.